Okay, I want you to try and forget everything you think you know about time, because we're about to take a journey, a 4.6 billion year journey. We're going to watch a planet of pure fire transform all the way to the birth of the very first empires. Yeah, this is basically the story of everything.
So can you really tell a 4.6 billion year story in just a few minutes? Well, we're gonna try. We are going to compress the entire history of our planet into one single epic narrative. We'll see the dinosaurs rise and fall. We'll watch our own ancestors take their very first steps. It's a story packed with chaos, survival, and unbelievable revolution. So yeah, you're gonna wanna buckle up.
All right, let's kick things off. Picture the early Earth, and I mean, forget the beautiful blue marble you see in pictures. This was a chaotic, raging ball of fire. You've got volcanoes everywhere, just spewing rivers of lava. The sky is thick with toxic gases. And then, the rain started. A relentless million-year downpour that just never stopped. It's this storm that finally, cooled the fiery surface and formed the very first oceans. So now we have these vast, warm oceans, and deep inside them something absolutely miraculous happens. The first tiny sparks of life flicker into existence, these little microscopic organisms. And some of them started to do something that would change, well, everything. They started producing oxygen. Think about that. These tiny microbes were the planet's very first terraformers. They were the first runners in this incredible relay race, slowly, patiently, creating the very air we need to breathe. And evolved. Life certainly did. Fast forward a few billion years, and the world is just teeming with life. The baton in our relay race gets passed to a new dynasty of rulers, the dinosaurs. But here's something you might not know. They didn't start out as the giants we all picture. Not at all. The very first dinosaurs, back in the Triassic period, were surprisingly small. I mean, some were no bigger than a fox. They were fast, they were agile, and they were just getting started on their incredible journey.
But of course, they didn't stay small for long. Oh no. Over millions of years, they evolved to a truly epic, mind-boggling scale. You have the Brachiosaurus, which was basically a walking building, weighing over 40 tons. And then there's the Titanosaurus, a creature so colossal its body could cover an entire football field. Can you even imagine that? The sound of its footsteps must have been like the earth itself beating a drum. This, right here, was their golden age.
But you know how it goes. Every golden age has to come to an end, and this one's end was coming from space. Silently hurtling across the void was an uninvited guest, a massive asteroid, somewhere between 10 and 15 kilometers wide. It was on a direct collision course with Earth, and it was about to change the fate of our planet forever.
And look, this wasn't just some rock. It was moving at an almost unimaginable speed, 70,000 kilometers per hour. To put that in perspective, it was moving so fast that if you saw it streaking across the sky, you wouldn't even have time to blink before it hit. It was an absolutely unstoppable force of cosmic destruction. And then, impact. It slammed into the planet right off the coast of modern-day Mexico with the force of billions of atomic bombs. In an instant, thousands of kilometers of land were just incinerated. Giant tsunamis ripped across the coastlines, and so much dust and ash got thrown into the atmosphere that it completely blocked out the sun, plunging the entire world into a dark, freezing nuclear winter.
So just like that, the dinosaurs, after ruling the Earth for millions of years, were gone. But here's the thing. This catastrophe wasn't the end of the story, not even close. It was a massive plot twist. The stage had just been violently cleared, creating this sudden, unexpected opening for a whole new cast of characters who'd been waiting in the wings.
So with the great reptiles out of the picture, the age of mammals could finally begin. You have to remember, for millions of years, our ancestors had been these tiny mouse-like creatures, basically just trying to survive in the shadows of giants. But now the world was theirs for the taking. As the climate slowly recovered, they started to diversify, to flourish, and to finally inherit the Earth.
Now, among all these new mammals, a really interesting group appeared in the dense forests of Africa, the primates. But the Earth, as always, was changing again. The climate started to cool, and those huge forests began to shrink, turning into wide open grasslands. This change forced our ancestors out of the trees and onto the ground. And that led to a truly revolutionary adaptation, walking upright on 2 feet. This was it, the first absolutely critical step on the long road to becoming human.
Okay, Let's jump forward in time again. We're at about 300,000 years ago, and our own species, Homo sapiens, shows up in East Africa. But here's the wild part. We weren't alone, not by a long shot. The planet was actually home to several other human species at the same time. You had the Neanderthals in Europe, who were powerful and really well adapted to the cold. Physically, they were stronger than us. But Homo sapiens, we had a key advantage. We had a more complex brain, one that was perfectly built for planning, communicating, and working together. And that brain power, well, that turned out to be our species' secret weapon. It was like a supercharge that would allow us to outcompete every other human on the planet. Scientists have a name for this game-changing moment. They call it the cognitive revolution.
So what exactly was this cognitive revolution? Well, it was a profound, fundamental shift in how our minds actually worked. We went from simple communication, stuff like, hey, look, a lion, to being able to talk about and think about abstract ideas, things like spirits, gods, shared myths, and even just plans for the future. For the very first time, a species on Earth could imagine and communicate about realities that didn't physically exist.
And this new way of thinking had absolutely world-changing consequences. Suddenly, with complex language, we could share intricate thoughts. But even more importantly, it allowed us to create and, crucially, believe in shared stories. Think about it, myths about gods, or the idea of a nation, or even the concept of money. These fictions became the social glue that could bind thousands, even millions, of complete strangers together. It unlocked a level of large-scale cooperation that the world had never, ever seen before.
Armed with this new superpower of cooperation, Homo sapiens basically exploded out of Africa. In what was a stunningly short amount of time, evolutionarily speaking, we spread across the entire planet. We crossed deserts, we climbed mountains, we sailed across oceans to populate pretty much every continent on Earth. It was, without a doubt, the fastest and most widespread expansion of any species in the planet's history. Nothing else even comes close.
For a long time we thought the story was one of simple conquest, that our ancestors just moved in and replaced other humans like the Neanderthals. But recent genetic research has revealed a much more intimate and, frankly, surprising truth. The story wasn't just about battles and conflict, it was also about connection. Our ancestors didn't just fight them, they had families with them, they interbred. And here's the really incredible part. If your background is European or Asian, you are carrying Neanderthal DNA inside your body right now. Yep, these traces of our long-lost relatives are still a part of our shared human family. They literally live on inside of us.
So as our species continued to spread, we faced some absolutely brutal challenges. The biggest one? The Ice Age. But through all of that, we proved that our ultimate strength wasn't just our intelligence, it was our incredible adaptability. We learned how to make better tools, how to sew clothes from animal skins. We developed new strategies to survive everywhere from frozen tundras to dense jungles. We didn't just survive in every environment on the planet, we conquered them. Then, around 11,000 years ago, the ice finally began to retreat. The planet warmed up, and for the first time in a long time, the climate became stable. This was a monumental shift. It allowed humanity to do something we'd never really done before, to stop wandering and actually start settling down. It was time for the final leg of this epic race. And our ancestors pretty quickly figured out what the most valuable resource was for building a permanent home. And it wasn't stone or wood, it was water. The fertile land along the banks of great rivers was the key to everything, to growing crops, to sustaining large populations. Water was the real gold. And it still is.
And so, right along those rivers, the world's first great civilizations began to bloom. You had Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. That's where they built the first real cities and even invented writing and codes of law. But at the same time, thousands of kilometers away, a totally different experiment was happening. Along the Indus River, another society built these incredible, meticulously planned cities with advanced plumbing. But mysteriously, they left behind no palaces, no monuments to kings. Two very different blueprints for the future of humanity.
And this really was the final transformation in our ancient journey. We went from living in these small, roaming bands of equals to building vast, complex societies. And to manage all these thousands of people, we had to create new structures, new hierarchies, farmers, soldiers, priests, and eventually, kings. We organized ourselves, we built monuments to our gods and rulers, and we began to write down the history that we are still trying to uncover today.
So there you have it. From a raging ball of fire through tiny microbes, giant dinosaurs, and brutal ice ages, all the way to the rise of the first cities and empires. It has been an unimaginably long and chaotic relay race. And now, for this one brief moment in all of cosmic time, we, Homo sapiens, are the ones holding the baton. So the real question is, what do we do with it? What happens in the next leg of the race?